Hello guys, good morning everybody. Welcome to our YouTube channel. I hope everybody is fit and fine and I am audible and visible to you guys. If I am audible and visible, just let me know. Right. Suvin, good morning to you guys. Good morning Krishnamurthy. After so much time, I have heard from you. Okay. So I am audible and visible. Okay guys. So we are going to begin the session for today with a very interesting news. Now, Q4 investments at an all-time high of 14.6 lakh crore. This basically quarter that this news article is, let's say, talking about is the January to March quarter, where the private sector investment has gone to an all-time high of 14.6 lakh crore. I think you can see over here that is the quarter's investment Q1, Q2, Q3 and Q4. The darker one is of the, let's say this one is of the government, the starting graphs, this one is of the private sector, let's say this one is of the private sector, this one is of the private sector, and these are the total investments that we have. I think everyone could see over here that is the, let's say अगर हम Q4 की investment की बात करते हैं. One thing you can see over here that this particular quarter we have the capital investment of 14.6 lakh crore. But can you see who is the major driver of the basic investments? That is the private sector. Very important. Its contribution is almost 10.1 lakh crore and it is very important and significant because recently we have seen the government being saying that they would be increasing their capital expenditure, but it is the private sector that has shown the growth and it has made the, let's say, lead in basically securing the investment in the capital expenditure. That is very important. वो important क्यों है? क्योंकि जितना ज्यादा capital expenditure होगा उतना ज्यादा हम कह सकते हैं कि हमारी GDP को एक boost मिलेगा. So this thing is very important to understand in this particular context that private sector has shown the growth in this particular aspect. Earlier अगर हम बात करें तो 4.5, 6.6 and 3.7 lakh crore. But this particular quarter, it has ended with a bang with the private sector going towards 10.5 lakh crore. Overall, the investment going to 14.6 lakh crore. So this is a very important aspect that you have to understand because these type of graphs, as you can see over here, there could be a prelims question that could be based on this particular graphs where they could ask you about the monitoring of the performance of the various indicators. They can say I have the various statements और वो बोल सकते हैं कि ज्यादा अगर हम बात करें इन्वेस्टमेंट के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से ज्यादा ग्रोथ कहां पे देखने को मिली है, तो आप वो कह सकते हो ज्यादा ग्रोथ कहां देखने को मिली है, इट हैज बीन फाउंड इन द प्राइवेट सेक्टर. Right guys? Okay. The second important news that we have to understand is demand for same-sex marriage recognition is urban's elitist view. Now there have been a lot of petitions that are pending before the Supreme Court related to one thing, that is the same-sex marriage, whether it shall be allowed or not. Now this issue has come again and again, but let me take you through and talk you the center's point of view. What does the center have to say on this particular aspect? Center has a two major case points. Center or the government is saying that this principle of same-sex marriage is against our ancient culture, it is against our ancient ethos and it is against ancient traditions. This is the first viewpoint. The second thing they are saying is any law, if it has to be made related to same-sex marriage, it is the prerogative of the legislature. It cannot be done through a judicial ruling. So this is the stance of the government. Along with it, what they have said in alternative to same-sex marriage, that is demand for same-sex marriage is the urban elitist view. Very important. Marriage is considered as an aspect of social policy of a nation. It is within the remit of the appropriate legislature as the elected representative to define it, recognize it, regulate it, and choice not to recognize same-sex marriage is simply a facet of the legislative policy. So the government is absolutely clear that जो ये marriage का concept है ये एक तरह से social policy दिखाता है government की across the world, and whether they want to have this regulation related to it, allow it or do not allow it, it is the prerogative of the central government. So this is the important point that you have to understand, because you might be writing answers in your mains examination where you have to take the, let's say certain question could come where you have to present both the views. That is the view of the petitioners who are in the favor of same sex marriage, and there could be a view of the government that you have to mention that what is the stance of the government in relation to same sex marriage. I hope this stance is clear to you guys, right? Okay, so these were the two important news that we had in our front page news. Okay, now these two articles, this is related to Armed Forces Special Power Act. We know that the under Armed Force Special Power Act, there is certain protection that has been given to the army personnel. This is related to certain criminal proceedings of the army that were started by the Nagaland police, but there were certain stay order put forward by the Supreme Court in order to drop down the criminal proceedings. So the question over here is that it is being asked by the editorial is that whether the army personnel under this AFSPA, which has been right now, if we talk about certain northeastern states, have been diluted to a certain extent, whether under this there shall be absolute impunity that shall be given to the army personnel, or there shall be a prior sanction, and if there is someone guilty, he or she, let's say, must be held accountable for the guilt that they have conducted under the, let's say, powers of AFSPA, अफस्पा जिसे हम बोल सकते हैं. So this is a very important editorial. This is basically related to promoting impunity. That is saying, denial of not to prosecute army men in Otting massacre is disconcerting. There was a certain massacre that happened, and this army personnel have not been, let's say, they have not been put under the trial and they have not been prosecuted. As a result, this issue has gone blown out of proportion. Right now, this is related to Armed Forces Special Power Act. Now, the second editorial that it wants to highlight is Chinese shenanigans on Arunachal Pradesh. I think everyone is aware of this particular news that recently China tried to rename 11 places of Arunachal Pradesh because they claim that Arunachal Pradesh is a part of their, let's say, tradition, their heritage, their culture, and it is their part on which India has exercised its claim. So in response to this, government said that Arunachal Pradesh is a part of India's territory and it belongs to, or it comes under the concept of India's sovereignty. So China tries to claim that it has, let's say, links with this particular area, that is the Arunachal Pradesh area. But one thing they are forgetting, that if we have to talk about India's linkage with Arunachal Pradesh, we can tell them that this is the Chinese authority, that is the Chinese personnel that we have. If we talk about linkage with the Arunachal Pradesh, हमारी तो tribes की linkage है वहां से, हमारी ancient culture की linkage अरुणाचल प्रदेश से. We have lot of reference that we have found in our various books that give a reference to the various tribes that were followers of, let's say, Buddhism, that were followers of Hindu religion. So there are lot of aspects that are there if we say, and if we try to make sure, if we have to put up a viewpoint that this area has been traditionally belonging to the Indian side. Let me give you one example. If we talk about, let's say, the tribes such as the Monpas, they have professed Buddhism, others follow animistic practices. Some tribes practice the form of Vaishnavism. The Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the Kalika Puran, the Vishnu Puran, the Yogina Puran, the Kalidasas Raghuvamsa have references that give a clear indication of the inclusion of these tribal tracts in the collective consciousness and culture moorings of ancient India. So can you see that we talk about these various Hindu texts that we have, and they have a direct linkage with the tribal people of that particular Arunachal Pradesh. One thing that is also very important, the tribes of Arunachal Pradesh, let's say, have their link with the Ahom tribe of Assam. So one thing is absolutely clear that China तो कहता है यार ये हमारा एरिया है, बट हम साफ साफ कह रहे हैं कि यहाँ पे जो लोग रहते हैं, यहाँ पे जो ट्राइब्स रहती हैं, उनके बहुत पुराने लिंक हैं, एंशिएंट लिंक्स हैं. अगर हम बात करें असम के साथ, रामायण महाभारत के साथ, और वो कौन सा धर्म फॉलो कर रहे हैं. सो हाउ कुड अरुणाचल प्रदेश बिलोंग टू अ पार्ट ऑफ चाइना? The second most important thing apart from the tribal linkage, that is the kingdoms linkage as well. The sources have indications about the boundaries of the kingdoms of Pragjyotisha and Kamrupa, whose limits appear to include the whole of Arunachal Pradesh. The Shiv Linga ling in, let's say, अगर हम बात करते हैं Zero, Parshuram Kund and the temple ruins of Malinitham, which are connected to the legends of Parshuram, Rukmani, Bhimsaka and Shishupala, show an ancient Hindu influence in the region. Some Mishmis consider themselves to be the descendant of King Bhishma, and some Akas claim their descent from King Bhaluka. Archaeological finds have unearthed silver coins and inscriptions in the Arabic script at Bhalukpong, linked to a Muslim ruler of Bengal. So can you see, अगर हम यहाँ पे बात करते हैं हमारे kingdom के linkages है, हमारी tribes के linkages है, right? So there are lot of linkages and some of the tribes they say they have a descendant from a particular Hindu king. So one thing is absolutely clear that जो China claim कर रहा है वो बहुत ही false claim है, वो बहुत ही ज़्यादा weird claim है. This is basically to let's say getting aggressive and make India, let's say, surrender to its demands. But one thing we have to do is we have to assert ourselves and try to, let's say, convince ourselves that this has been historically our part, our land, our territory, that could be verified from these references that have been made, like the references of the tribes, like the references of the descendants, like the ancient links with the Aham tribe of Assam. Let's say we had the link of kingdoms as well, plus we have found the archaeological evidences as well. So these are the areas that justify their claim of India towards, rightfully, towards the Arunachal Pradesh. Hello, are you able to understand this particular aspect, that what is this particular editorial wants to say, that what is the meaning? They have gone to the history, provided and carved out a particular link so that people are able to understand that China's claim is absolutely false and absolutely vague. Right guys, if you are able to understand this, just let me know. Hanji, yes or no? Yes, okay. Chaliye. Now, I think everyone is aware of the situation that is going on in Sudan. You must have heard across the news. So there was this news in the world page yesterday as well. Now it has come in the editorial part as well. Now there have certain instances that have happened in Sudan where a lot of civilians are being killed, that has almost resulted into a civil war. Now let's try to understand the situation, what is going on in, let's say, Sudan. Now the major violence that is being coming in Sudan is in its capital city of Khartoum, first of all. Now earlier there was an authoritarian regime in, अगर हम बात करते हैं सुदान की, एक अथॉरिटेरियन रीजन थी बशर भाई साहब की, that was let's say overtaken by the military, and they decided that they would form a sovereign council. A sovereign council was formed and its prime minister was made. But due to the military ambitions, that prime minister was also ousted by two persons. That two persons are very, very important, Burhan and Dagolo. Now Dagolo is the head of the paramilitary forces and Burhan is the head of the army. This is the main area that you have to understand, that Burhan is the army head and Dagolo is the part of the paramilitary or the head of paramilitary. These were the two persons that basically ousted the prime minister of the sovereign council that was made for the transitional period. Now the issue over here that has now come up is between these two people only. These two were the strongest allies in 2021 when they ousted the prime minister of the sovereign council. But the problem that has now resulted between two is certain issues that have come up between these two great, let's say, powerhouses. Now, army says that this RSF, that is the rapid support force or the paramilitary forces, would be integrated into the army. First of all, it would be integrated into the army. The second important thing that they are saying is that they want, let's say, under the international pressure, भाई उनको pressure है बहुत ज़्यादा क्योंकि बाहर से funding रुकी हुई है पैसों के लिए, क्यों? क्योंकि यहाँ पे डेमोक्रेसी एस्टैब्लिश नहीं है, तो ये कहते हैं आर्मी वाले कि 2 साल के अंदर डेमोक्रेसी एस्टैब्लिश करनी है. But Dagolo is saying that first of all, if RSF, let's say rapid support force, is integrated into the army, his identity would be lost. He would no longer be the hero of the RSF, first of all. Second of all, he doesn't want to have a transition to a democracy within 2 years, but he wants to have a transition within 10 years. These are the two major areas of contest or the bone of contention that has arisen between the Burhan and the rapid support forces held by the de Gaulle. So as a result de Gaulle ने क्या किया, इतना इशू बढ़ गया बुरहान जी के साथ, उन्होंने पूरे अपने एरिया में कंट्री में फिर से रीडिप्लॉयमेंट कर दी, प्रेसिडेंशियल पैलेस को ओवरटेक कर लिया. सो एज अ रिजल्ट बैटल हैज ब्रोकन बिटवीन दीज टू फैक्शंस. वन इज द आर्मी लेड बाय बुरहान एंड सेकंड वन इज द de Gaulle that is leading the paramilitary forces. International agencies have called on to them and have prayed to them that you have to end this violence, but this violence has continued for the third day, and you have seen the destruction that it has caused in the capital city of Sudan. The capital city of Sudan kya hai? That is Khartoum. Very important. So this is the editorial that you need to understand, that what is the problem that has been going on, that is related to a time bound transition to democracy. ये कह रहे हैं 2 साल तक आर्मी वाले, और ये कह रहे हैं कि हम 10 साल चाहिए हमको ट्रांजिशन करने के लिए डेमोक्रेसी के लिए. आई होप यू आर एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस एडिटोरियल, राइट. ये प्रॉब्लम्स हैं जो आईआईटीज में काउंसलिंग की बात करी है, मेंटल थेरेपीज की बात करी है, नॉट सच इंपॉर्टेंट, राइट. ओके, now this is an article that is very interesting, that is related to dealing with extreme heat. I think everyone of us right now is facing the heat vulnerabilities, the extreme heat or the heat waves that we are facing. Now one of the effect that has of the heat wave on, let's say, agriculture is the decline of the cumin crop. भाई इसमें losses face हुए हैं, that has been the losses that has been faced in the cumin crop, that has been quite evident. This is basically grown in the area of Gujarat and Rajasthan. It is grown in the area of Gujarat and Rajasthan, and there has been a shortage of the cumin crop. The second important thing you have to understand is that heat waves have a direct impact on the labor productivity, because labor has to work in the heat, and if there would be increased heat waves, then it would have a direct impact on the labor productivity. So the question comes, yes, there is an impact on the labor productivity, there is an impact on the agriculture as well. How do we deal with it? The problem here that is coming in the urban areas is the problem of urban heat islands. So one of the smartest thing that one can do is that you can, let's say, increase the greening part of the city, ज़्यादा पेड़ उगाइए. Second, restore the wetlands that can absorb, let's say, carbon dioxide. Third important thing they are saying, you have to go for a very well designed construction material in the urban areas that doesn't absorb that much heat. You have to make sure that आपका construction material इस तरीके से हो कि वो ज़्यादा heat को क्या करे, absorb नहीं करे. So this is the third thing they are trying to say, that better construction material. Fourth thing they are trying to say is you have to reduce the indoor air pollution as well, because that is also resulting in the heat, more and more heat. How you can do that? By using a cleaner cooking fuel and cleaner cooking devices. These are the certain things that have been inscribed in this particular editorial. Along with it, they have given the example of Chandigarh as well, that how beautifully this city was planned, let's say when it was originally planned. But now there have been certain obstructions और ऐसी construction हुई है जहां से जो smart project था ना, जो कि smart तरीके से city को build किया गया था, वो थोड़ा बहुत खतरे में है. But overall, if we talk about the architecture of Chandigarh, it is very much climate friendly, and it has been made in order to show it minimizes the impact of the heat waves. So these are the certain things that they have tried to warn us, tried to tell us that what we have to do if there is a certain instances of heat waves that we are witnessing. So you increase the greening part, restore the wetlands, you go for better construction materials, and you can go for cleaner cooking fuel and cleaner cooking devices. Plus you can take the examples of the best planned urban cities that we have in India. So this is the theme and the crux of this particular editorial that tries to say dealing with the extreme heat. Right, guys? Okay. Now, I think we have already discussed this same-sex marriage. So I would quickly tell you the gist what they try to say. On April 18, a 5-judge Supreme Court bench headed by Chief Justice of India is scheduled, that is today, to hear a series of petitions seeking legal recognition of same-sex marriage. The Union government has said that the idea of same-sex marriage is merely an urban elitist view. They said that it is the parliament and not the courts that have to decide on the same-sex marriage. Who has the prerogative? Government is saying that it would be decided by the legislature. The Kanchan Foundation, now what are the views of various NGOs, has submitted that the deep-seated stereotypes and mental barriers that have been constructed over centuries cannot be dismantled by a mere judicial ruling. They are talking about there are certain mental barriers, certain stereotypes. कहते हैं कि वो ना dismantle नहीं हो सकते हैं सिर्फ एक judicial ruling की वजह से. It has to come up in the society. That is the attitude of the people, attitude of the society that has to change if they have to adopt this particular legalization of the same-sex marriage. So this is an interesting thing that is being going on. Let's say what is being heard today in the Supreme Court related to legalization of same-sex marriage. Okay. Moving to the next part, there's nothing important over here, so I'm quickly going to the last page. Okay, see, if we talk about India's bilateral trade with Russia, we import more, that is Russia export more. So one thing is very much clear, that Russia exports more to India as compared to imports. So as a result, the trade with Russia, if we talk about India, it is not completely balanced. It is more tilted towards the side of Russia. If we compare the trade of Russia with China, that is their import and export, then they are absolutely in the ratio of 50:50. So as a result, Russia wants to say is that yes, we want to reduce our dependence on the West. First of all, we want to reduce the dependence of dollars in international, let's say, trade and currency. Second, third important thing they are trying to say that if we have to increase the trade in terms of rupee and ruble, one thing we have to make sure that this trade is particularly balanced, that we are also importing from India in order to have a healthy relationship in the bilateral trade. So as a result, they are saying because we have to reduce the dependence on the West, we have to make sure that this rupee ruble trade mechanism works. They are trying to make sure that they import a lot of machinery from India as compared to the West. That is what they are trying to say. The country wants to import manufacturing equipment including machinery from India to replace the West. Now this is a very interesting thing that is being coming against the backdrop of, in order to make sure that the more and more trade is being done in rupee and ruble, already certain Russian banks have opened special rupee Vostro account. They have already opened special rupee Vostro account with the Indian banks. So this is a very interesting development that is coming if we talk about the overall scenario, that Russia obviously we want to know कि यार वो USA से साइड हो रहे हैं और इंडिया के साथ ज्यादा ट्रेड करना चाहते हैं. So वो ज्यादा ट्रेड कैसे होगा? ज्यादा से ट्रेड इससे होगा कि अगर वो हमसे इंपोर्ट भी करे, राइट? So that only this particular mechanism could work, right? So this was an interesting news that you have to understand. The next interesting news is India would be hosting a summit on Buddhism, right? When it would be hosted, what would be the key agendas that they would be discussing? You must be knowing about that जब वो आएगी. अभी के लिए बस इतना याद कर लो कि इंडिया बुद्धिज्म के ऊपर समिट को होस्ट करेगा. That India would be hosting a summit on Buddhism, right? Now there is a particular award that has been given to Utsa Patnaik. She has won the Malcolm Adishye Award 2023 that is being given to economist. तो बस इतनी चीज याद रख लो, एक इकोनॉमिस्ट का अवार्ड है मेलकम आदिश्य अवार्ड 2023. जनरली सच टाइप ऑफ क्वेश्चंस आर नॉट बीइंग आस्क्ड इन आवर UPSC exam, but they are asked in other exams, but they have mentioned it, so we need to read about it. This particular award, it is being given by the Malcolm and Elizabeth Adiashe Trust. ये इसको अवार्ड को कौन देता है और ये पता होना चाहिए. और लास्ट ईयर इट वॉज बीइंग वन बाय द इंडियन इकोनॉमिस्ट Prabhat Patnaik, very important. Last year it was also won by Indian and this year it has been also won by the Indian, that is the Utsa Patnaik, right? Okay. Pitas find new heaven in Odisha districts. Now this is basically talking about a particular bird, that is the mangrove pitas, that is being found in this area of Odisha. If we talk about in the Bhitarkanika in Odisha, and this particular bird that they are trying to make sure जिनका census किया गया है, अगर we talk about its IUCN status, it is absolutely close to near threatened. किसके पास है? वो बिल्कुल नियर थ्रेटेंड कैटेगरी के आसपास है. सो दिस इज एन इंपॉर्टेंट रिजल्ट दैट इज कमिंग फ्रॉम दिस पर्टिकुलर न्यूज कि टोटल मैंग्रोव पिता के बारे में पूछ लें तो मेजर कहां पे पाए गए हैं? ओडिशा के अंदर पाए गए हैं, जहां पे पहली बार यहां पे सेंसस किया गया था. तो इनकी अगर हम IUCN स्टेटस की बात करें, इट इज एब्सोल्युटली क्लोज टू नियर थ्रेटेंड, राइट? ओके. So this is a world page. Already we've discussed Sudan. Okay, so one thing you need to know that there has been a lot of power shortage, power crisis in Bangladesh. So Russia is developing a nuclear power plant in Russia, but Bangladesh and Russia have agreed that Bangladesh would be paying Russia in yuan. Very important. They have given a loan period for 28 years at a certain rate of interest with a 10-year grace year period. That loan amount could be returned back in the yuan currency that has been fixed between these two nations, right? So it would be helping a lot in Bangladesh tackling with the power crisis and the shortage of oil that they are currently facing right now. Okay, so this was the important news, and finally we are done with our today's analysis, right? Chaliye. I hope you were able to understand the Hindu's newspaper of today. Today's newspaper was a very important one because there were very serious important editorials that were very much important, like the urban heat island, how we deal with it, the problem of Sudan, China renaming of Arunachal Pradesh, AFSPA, that army people should be, let's say, more accountable, and there shall be a prior sanction from the army or from the, let's say, their court, that are the military courts. So these are the particular important information that we had in our today's newspaper. I hope you liked the session. If you like the session, so do like, share and subscribe. Till then, thank you so much guys. We will see each other tomorrow, same time 9 AM. Till then, thank you. Bye bye. Take care.